What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Bearded Banker podcast, hosted by yours truly, Daniel Valencia, team leader and senior mortgage loan officer, NMLS number 957014. On this podcast, we discuss everything mortgages, money, and mindset. If you're listening, you may not know, but you can watch the video of this podcast on YouTube. And if you're watching, if you don't know, you can listen to this podcast on your preferred podcast platform. Either way, I appreciate you for taking the time and hope you find it valuable. And if so, you can do all the things that we know the almighty algorithm loves. But for now, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. Welcome, and Happy New Year. I hope you enjoyed that little introduction I recorded. I recorded it for a couple reasons. One, just to add some value to, some production value to the podcast. And two, I was getting a lot of feedback that people didn't know that the podcast was available on YouTube or vice versa, available on the podcast platforms to listen to. So just wanted to throw that in there and obviously let you guys know that I appreciate you. So that intro will be added moving forward until we update it or change it and give a little bit more production value, maybe add some music or something, right, and liven it up. But Happy New Year. Thank you for joining me. If you're watching this on YouTube, you may know that the video itself looks a little bit different. I switched up the camera lens. I have a couple different options now, which is awesome. And I just wanted to get a little bit more of the backdrop of the room so you guys can see a little bit more of, where I live and how it looks in my environment every day, where I work from, where I record from, until we find a space or design a space for strictly podcasting and working out of. So again, Happy New Year 2024. I was on a little bit of a 3-week hiatus or so with the pod, taking a little bit of a break just because of the holidays, Christmas, New Year's, and just back-to-back events and family gatherings and things with friends. So it was crazy, and it was a much-needed time for a little bit of a break and kind of regrouping, reevaluating, and seeing how we wanted to move forward. That being said, I did miss doing the podcast for sure. The break was good and not having to worry about it, but then rethinking it and wanting to get back into it and obviously have all the content that goes along with it and provide the value that goes along with it. Looking forward to this year. So I just want to recap kind of last year, what to look forward to this year, where things are going to go, what to expect in the mortgage industry, real estate industry, and with the podcast and things like that. So last year, needless to say, was a tough year. The toughest year in my career, and I like to think of it as my 2008, right? My recession, my kind of grind through to kind of earn my stripes. Now, being in the industry over a decade, definitely put in a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of reps, and earned my stripes, senior loan officer, team leader, all that good stuff. But actually going through that, last 12 months or so of tough times in the industry really, I think, was, a blessing in disguise. So just to give you guys some perspective on this and how this works with the industry, I think as a team, my total volume, what I actually got paid on, either personal production, team volume, things like that, was somewhere around 10 million in total in volume, which I haven't done since literally my first full year in the business, right? So probably around 2014, I think it was like 7 million in volume. And I'm used to, 20, 30 million in volume per year. So, the word adjustment is an understatement. And I want to give you guys, again, some perspective on the industry for those who don't know, as far as volume, what that means, how we get paid, right? So it's 100% commission based on the volume that you produce as far as gross income. So how I always explain it to people is the closer you are to the beginning of a real estate transaction, the more you will get paid. What I mean by that is when a deal gets agreed upon, right, an accepted offer, the closer you are to making that deal happen at the beginning, the more you get paid. So number one would be the realtors, right? Real estate agents get paid the most per transaction as far as a percentage of that transaction. And then the further you get away from the beginning of that, the less you get paid per transaction, meaning you have to do more volume to make the same amount of money, all things being the same, right? All things being equal. So to break it down a little bit, a real estate agent up front will get paid the biggest check from that transaction based on the price of the sale, whether they're on the buyer side, seller side, or if they're a dual agent, which is allowed in some states, meaning they're representing both sides. Next would be the mortgage professional if there is financing, if it's not a cash deal. So the loan officer, banker, broker, whatever it might be, they would be next in line. Then you might have like attorneys and title companies. Some states don't use attorneys, some states do. Attorneys themselves charge a flat fee most of the time, so it's a little bit of a difference in how they get paid, but it's still based on how many units they do in total volume. The more they do, the more they get paid, but their portion of that transaction is minimal compared to the real estate agent, the lender, the title company as well. They'll get a percentage, or their fees are usually based on a percentage of the deal, but again, smaller than the realtor and then the loan officer. And then from there, you have, let's say, maybe inspections, appraisers. Then you have, at the end of the process, like home insurance, insurance reps. So the further you are away, the more volume you have to do to make the same amount of money, right? So a realtor can do a lot less volume and make really good money, whereas an insurance rep at the end has to do a lot more volume to make the same amount of money or more. They have to do a lot more units, right? Same thing with like an attorney. They get paid a flat fee. They have to do a lot more units. So just to give you guys some perspective on how that looks coming from a mortgage professional. I know a lot of the audience is, in sales, mortgage professionals, real estate people, things like that. And maybe you can apply that to what you do if you're in any type of sales industry or profession, you would understand. So going back to this last year, tough year for everybody, real estate agents, mortgage professionals, attorneys, title companies, insurance reps, everybody. It was definitely a really difficult year to find the volume, to find the production, because there just wasn't a lot of activity going on, which again, I'll say, kind of a blessing in disguise. So adjustment is definitely an understatement, because as, the production and your income increases over the years, your lifestyle tends to increase as well, right? We make more money. We want to live a little bit better. We want new clothes, new cars, new homes, new, vacations, new restaurants we go to, right? Everything just kind of gets a little bit better. So when you're used to making more money, especially in a commission industry or commission role, and then your production drops, 50, 75%, guess what? Your income does too, right? So you have to regroup, you have to reevaluate, you have to adjust. So I always say, it's a blessing in disguise coming into the industry, knowing what I know after being in it for, let's call it 8 or 9 years before this last year happened, having the knowledge of, okay, how to pivot, how to make sure we don't quit, we stay in the game, right? We definitely want to get through it and then gain market share once everyone else leaves, which we'll talk about in a second. But, regrouping and reevaluating the business. I was talking to one of my realtor partners this week. We had a long week of real estate agent and referral partner meetings and conversations as far as strategizing for 2024. And part of that was just obviously discussing last year and how it was for them, how it was for us, and everyone's on the same page. Rough year, but we're still here and grateful for that. So it really showed us, everybody in the industry, our weaknesses, where we had some blind spots in our business, and where we could tweak some things and make things better. So I'm grateful for it because it enabled me to really double down on the systems and structure of my business, on the team, on who's doing what, and the prospecting, and having an assistant on my team that handles a lot of customer-facing follow-up and cold calling and things like that with Kathleen Noss, which, I'm so grateful to her, and making sure that everything is getting done on all ends. So we're prospecting, and we're making sure the deals that come in are being reviewed. We're consulting, we're advising, and we're closing, right? We're closing transactions. And then trying to drum up more business, obviously. So, definitely a revealing year for a lot of people. And, like I said, we're grateful for it. So, being in this situation, it's difficult, right? You have to reevaluate. You have to have conversations with your family, with my, with Laura, with my wife Laura, and like what we're spending money on, what we're not spending money on, and having open dialogue, which I encourage all of you to have that with your significant others, because it is priceless. Being on the same page, looking at the finances together, even if one person kind of quarterbacks it, the other one needs to be aware and know what's going on and know why the decisions are being made the way they are, and why we're talking about the things we are, so we can come to a decision together. So definitely a year of that for us, and we're still here, we're still in the business, we're still surviving. So happy for that and optimistic about 2024. I think the end of last year, November, December, I feel like people, consumers, the professionals in the industry, all kind of came to terms with where the market is and what's going on, right? In the beginning of the year, so the end of 2021, early 2022 was more of a shell shock of what's going on with inflation and raising rates and the market, and not really having the production people were used to, especially the easy production, right? A couple quotes I always use: in high tides, all boats will rise, right? So when the volume comes into the industry like it did in 2020, 2021, and parts of 2022, it was easy to make the money, right? Think of a fisherman, right? The tide rises, the fish come, you could throw a net out pretty simply and make a lot of money, catch a lot of fish, right? Very easily. But when the tide goes out, it takes a lot more skill with a lot less fish to catch something. So the quotes I like are: in high tides, all boats will rise. But then another one is: when the tide goes out, you can see who's skinny dipping, right? Which is basically like not prepared, right? Not ready for the inevitable, right? What is going to happen, especially in a market. Any market is typically cyclical. There's ups and downs and peaks and valleys, and you have to be prepared. And we knew, the veterans in the game, the conversations we were having with my mentors and my upper management was, look, this isn't going to last forever, so be prepared. And luckily we were, to an extent, maybe not as prepared, or didn't know it would get as bad as it did, but prepared enough to weather the storm and still be here. And I think having all those changes come as abruptly as they came, and figuring it out as we went along. I've always been a person to keep myself under pressure to an extent, financially, with bills and just the business, and maybe getting myself into some situations to keep the pressure up, challenges, getting uncomfortable, right? All that stuff, whether you're investing in something for a referral partner or a realtor, or a new investment into a product or merchandise, or even this podcast, right? It's just putting yourself out there and committing to something, and then having to, stick it out, right? Make it happen. So whether that's everything I just mentioned, or even just increasing lifestyle, increasing your living conditions, what you're spending money on, the cars, right? Things like that, big purchases that affect your bottom line. Keeping that increased requires you to figure it out, because you have to service the commitments that you made, whether they're financial or personal, business, whatever commitments that you've made. So keeping a level of pressure on yourself and causing yourself to rise to the occasion has been beneficial for me, because things have gotten better every step of the way, and we'll regroup, kind of, pay everything off and start cutting loose ends, regroup, and then things kind of level up, which is something people always tell me about, like having kids, like, oh, as soon as you have kids, don't worry, you're going to make more money. You're going to, do better than you ever did in your business, whatever the case is. And I like to think that's true. Don't have kids yet, so I don't know. But from what I've seen, people tend to do better. I don't know if that's just getting further along in the career. I don't know if that's I'm assuming there's some added pressure. Right now I have mouths to feed. It's not just about me. It's not about my comfort. It's like, we got to make this happen. We have these things to pay for, and kids are not cheap, right? Which we all know. So I think just keeping those added levels of manageable pressure to perform help. At least for me, they do. I don't know if they do for you. Some people, it might stress you out too much, and you need to kind of double down or take a step back on what you have in front of you. And, I've always thrown myself into situation, tried a bunch of things, and got a taste for it, right? See what I like, see what I don't, not being scared to just do it. Same thing with this podcast. And we're on podcast 14. Took a little break, had to regroup. But it's definitely something I want to continue doing and keep finding the direction for. So, keeping that pressure on yourself will cause you to perform in most cases. So if you're feeling stuck or you're feeling like your personal internal motivation isn't enough, which some people have it, some people don't. I can operate without external motivations for the most part. I don't need someone on top of me watching me, counting numbers and looking at things to perform. I kind of hold myself accountable. I think a lot of people do. If you are one of those, then having the pressure of, having to get something done will help push you. And I'm not saying to go out and get into a bunch of debt or do something stupid, but maybe, giving yourself some type of responsibility or commitment that you have to live up to could get you out of a funk or could get you out of a plateau with whatever's going on. So just a tip there, something that you might find beneficial. Again, we're being responsible, but it always helps to have that external pressure and cause you to go out and bring in whatever that is, income, business, production, relationships, whatever you're looking to attain. Sometimes having that pressure of having to do it, even if you're working out or trying to lose weight, sign up for a group competition or a bodybuilding show or something, right? You're definitely going to have that pressure of getting better. I know a lot of people, friends and family included, that like to book vacations, a couple months out and say, okay, now I have something to work towards, right? So they work towards that, whether it's in the gym, their diet, finances, going hard, knowing that they have a break coming. It's all psychology. It's all tricking our minds into pushing ourselves forward. So that's kind of where I see this last year for me going into 2024. But again, definitely optimistic. For 2024, I think a lot of conversations I had were optimistic with clients and partners and feeling like, okay, again, that shock of what's going on has worn off. We know what it is now, and we're optimistic about what's to come with the Fed and interest rates and things dropping and hopefully more inventory and things like that, which we'll talk about in a second. So definitely looking forward to 2024. And, all that being said, the beautiful part about sales, and that's what we're doing here, make no mistake about it, if you're a realtor or a mortgage professional or really anything you're doing, you're selling to some extent. The beautiful part about it is we can put in the time, we can build the relationships and simplify our systems to increase the bottom line, right? We can apply ourselves more, we can tweak, we can adjust, and we can kind of determine the outcome, right? We can look at the data and change some things and basically increase the activity to increase the production. And 9 times out of 10, increasing production increases income and the bottom line. So it's really something to value being in, and I'm happy that I'm in it, and I'm happy that I have some type of control over my destiny. Can I control the overall market? Obviously not, because when things got bad, there was, nothing I could do to an extent to bring back the years of feast, right? When it's famine, you got to work 2 or 3 times as hard to make, half the money, which is something that my team, other managers in my company, top producers, we had a top 10 list I made the list somewhere in the middle. And there were producers even higher than me, and happy to be part of that conversation. But we all agreed that it's double and triple the work for, a quarter, half of the income that we're used to. But it is causing everyone, again, to, reevaluate their business and get better. And that's always good. That's always how you want to be thinking, is how can I use this to get better? And when this comes around again, because it will, be better for it and make sure that my business is insulated enough to, again, weather the storm and handle it and, gain market share in those times. So a little bit about interest rates. Rates should be coming down. Very happy about that. I'm sure everybody is. That is what the plan is for the Fed, and they're expecting 2 to 3 cuts next year, or this year, 2024. So that's great news for us. Also going into that, knowing that there's going to be more activity and knowing that a lot of people got out of the business, there's an opportunity to gain market share for the professionals that stayed in the industry, whether you're a realtor, a mortgage guy or girl, and then everyone else I mentioned, attorneys, title companies, insurance agents, appraisers, inspectors, all that, good stuff. If you stayed in, you made it through. A lot of people got out, so you can gain market share when things kind of boom again. So a lot of the Riff Raff is out of the business. I read something on housingwire.com. It said tens of thousands of loan officers exited the industry in 2023. In October, 67% of the current loan officers produced less than 1 unit of closed loans in October. An additional 21% closed 1.5 units per month, and only 12% closed greater than 2.5 units per month by October. So a lot of those people have gotten out of the industry because they just can't cut it. It's hard to pay the bills when you're not doing the business that you need to do. As for real estate agents, by the start of summer, about 60,000 agents had left, and that probably at least doubled by the end of the year. So if there's 1 to 2 million total real estate agents at any given time, 1% of which do majority of the business anyway, a lot of the riffraff, the people that got licensed during the pandemic, right? The pandemic agents were like, oh no, it was easy in the beginning. This is hard. Can't do it. I quit my job for this. If I'm not making the money I was making before, then I can't do it, right? And real estate already has a lot of quote unquote part-time licenses, either realtors on referral or full-time realtors that just look at it as a part-time gig. So I would assume majority of them kept their license active, but they don't have a ton of market share anyway, right? Because the top 1% does most of the business as far as active agents and doing the production. There's a lot of part-time agents that have it for themselves or friends or family. They do some stuff here and there, maybe some rentals, but for the most part, they might have kept their licenses just because it was part-time. Anyway, they didn't really do much with it. So a lot of the numbers that we see as far as licensed real estate agents in the country, it's not even 80% of them or 20% of them doing 80% of the business. It's like 1 to 2% of them doing 80 to 90% of the overall business, right? So the ones that actually left the business probably were part-time to begin with and maybe got a second job, right? So now there's 3. They had a job, they had a part-time real estate license that would make them some money, and then that wasn't making the money they needed to make, so then they got another part-time gig for a steady paycheck. So I think a lot of people that were licensed realtors and MLOs, or I know that they've exited, and more will probably exit this year too, because it's still, tough, but that opens things up for us and allows us to gain some market share. So what does it all mean? I mean, for industry participants, realtors and LOs, 2024 will be an even better year again to gain that market share and, and kind of take their business to the next level. Now, when rates come down, when will that be and how low will they drop? So again, we're expecting 3 cuts by the end of the year. I've heard reports saying the 3 last meetings of the year, as far as the Fed meetings, looking for cuts. And I've read reports that as early as March. So we don't really know for sure. We know it's going to happen. That's the plan anyway. But we don't know exactly when. But we do know what's going to happen when they do, right? So when rates come down, and you've probably heard this a million times, either from me or if you follow any type of real estate content, when rates come down, things will seem more affordable, right? Because when people do their calculations with a lower interest rate, the total monthly payment for a property, for a home, will be lower. And they'll say, oh, now I can probably afford this. Let me get pre-approved. We're going to do a lot more pre-approvals. And everybody's going to come out of woodwork trying to buy a house, which is going to drive up demand, right? So now let's take a simple example. Take your town. Let's say there's 10 houses for sale. Let's say there's 50 pre-approved buyers looking in that town, right? The 10 houses, it's hard to win the offer because there's not a lot of houses. There's 50 buyers. It's tough. The competition is high. Now, when rates come down and more people jump into the market, now, instead of having 50 buyers, you might have 100 buyers. And instead of having 10 houses, maybe more people are like, well, if I want to buy something new or I want to upgrade or downsize my living arrangement, then I have to sell this house. So maybe more houses come on the market. So let's say it goes from 10 to 20, but then the pre-approvals go from 50 to 100, right? You're just increasing the demand, increasing the competition. So it's going to drive up prices even more. So prices are going to get higher, which you cannot refinance the price of a house. You can refinance an interest rate. So we always say that it's best to buy a home in the winter, November, December, January, February, in most states, because there's less activity, right? The most activity in the country is spring, summer market. Part of that is because of the weather. Part of that is because it's summer and people have time on their hands, or kids aren't in school, so that people can move while the kids are on summer vacation and then sign them up for school for September, end of August, September, depending on where you live, when the kids start school. So that's always the busiest time of year. If you can find something in the winter, I think I went over this in an earlier podcast or one of the videos on my Instagram page. If you're buying a home in the winter, most people that list in the winter are serious about selling, right? They have to move for one reason or the other because, again, it's not the best time to sell. It's not the best time to move. The weather sucks, right? All of that. So if they're selling, they're serious. And when you're buying, you can get a better deal because there's typically less competition. And you could gauge the house better because if there's rain or snow, you can see how the house handles it. You can see if there's leakage or how the roof does, or anything with the foundation, right? It's just a better time to see how the house handles those kind of conditions. So good time to buy a house. You can get a better deal and get a better overall picture of the house you're buying, negotiate some credits, right, for inspections or repairs, things like that. So it's a good time to buy. However, that being said, most people wait till spring, summer. More people list in spring, summer. More people buy in spring, summer. So demand's going to go up when those rates do come down. We do think they're going to start spring, May. Hopefully, worst case scenario, definitely by the end of the year, October, November, December, we might see the cuts. Either way, there's going to be more activity this year than last year because, again, people are now comfortable with the shock. The shock has worn off. This is the new normal as far as where the rates are, where their buying power is, where the cost of goods is, just everything, their jobs. The shock has kind of worn off and things are starting to settle. So with that, people are just going to be more confident in the market. It's an election year, so election years are always typically good for markets and rates because politicians are trying to get your vote. And usually they do that by trying to put money in your pocket, either with tax cuts or rate cuts or both. So usually election years are a good year for real estate and rates. So we look forward to that as well. So all of that being said, we don't know when things are going to change, but they are going to change. I've been telling my team we should see a little mini refi boom, right? Not as much as we saw in the pandemic when rates are 2 and 3%, because they're not going to go that low. We think they're going to be somewhere around the 6% range, which they're already, kind of there. They might get into the 5s, right, with points. I quoted a first-time home buyer yesterday on a joint buyer consultation with one of my realtor partners. So they had the consultation for about a half hour. virtual. I jumped on for the last 10 or 15 minutes to go over some mortgage stuff with them. And when I ran the quote for them, we were at a 6.5%, 6.49, something like that, on a 30-year fixed for their scenario with no points. So that being said, you can probably get into the fives with points, and points are just fees that you pay to get the lower rate. Lower rate equals lower payment, lower debt to income ratio, things like that. We still have tools for temporary buy downs and all that good stuff, which I won't go into on this podcast. But if rates, when those cuts happen, the Fed is going to cut what they call the short-term interest rate, which is what the Fed charges to lend banks money overnight. That rate is not directly correlated to mortgage rates, right? They're not cutting the mortgage rate. It just impacts the mortgage rate. So what I've been telling my team is, look, they're going to cut the rates. Rates are going to come down to 6, maybe somewhere in the 5s. All the people from the last year to, 18 months that are in the high 6s, 7s, some of them even touched 8 or over 8%, are going to be primed to refi. But it's not as many people as it was during the pandemic when everyone was at 4, 5, 6, 7% and rates came down to 2, right? Everybody could refinance. It's not going to get there again. And for you as a buyer or a seller, it's important to know this so you can know when it's time to make a move, right? And I don't mean make a physical, move as far as moving from home to home. I mean, make a chess move, take an action, right? An activity of like, okay, I'm going to reach out to an agent, or I'm going to list my house, or I'm going to call my lender to see if it's time to refi. We don't know. We don't have a crystal ball of when, we can't time the market and know when rates are going to be at the lowest, but we'll know when it's a good time for you, which is usually about a 0.5% drop. With a 0.5% drop on a 30-year fixed, you can save significant money over the life of the loan, depending on your scenario, which we can go over. But even, a 1% drop, things like that will be huge. And at that time, we do suggest, depending on your scenario, again, talk to your professional, your loan officer if you have one. If you don't, you can reach out to me, licensed in all 50 states, of course. But depending on your scenario, at that time, we would suggest or advise then buying points down to get the lowest possible rate you can, because you probably won't have to touch that loan again for as long as you have that house and you have that mortgage, and you could just focus on paying it off as quickly as possible. Doesn't really make sense to buy down rates with points now or over the last 6 months to a year, because we were pretty convinced that rates were going to come down. So don't spend the money now. Just take the rate that you can qualify with for the cheapest out-of-pocket expense, and let's close on the house and get you the house. Again, because right now competition is much lower. You can get a better price for a house. Whereas if you wait, like I was saying earlier, when everyone jumps back in the market, rates are low, but then the price goes up and you're paying more money for the same house. Even though your rate's low, it could have more of an impact on your payment. So let's get the house now, take the higher rate, and then in the next 12 months to 16 months, at that time we were saying when rates come down, we could refinance it and get you the lower rate. Now you got the house at a low price, based on when you were looking, and now you have a rate to match that's low that you can lock in, buy down points, get as low as possible, and never have to touch that mortgage again for the most part, unless you're looking to cash out or tap into some equity because of, high school children going to college, or you want to renovate the house or anything like that, but then you have the equity at that time. And then also you're going to gain all the appreciation, right? Because if you buy now, and we know that in the next 6 months to 12 months, there's going to be another sort of boom, rates drop, more people jump in the market, competition goes up, supply and demand, prices are going to go up. That means the value of your property that you bought a year ago is going to go up, right? Because the comps are higher overall because the prices have gone up because of the demand. So it's just a good time to buy sooner rather than later. If you are considering, definitely let us know. So that's what we're expecting when rates drop, and we're looking forward to it. Again, I want to remain and communicate the optimism that we have for this year. If you're in the industry, this is going to be a good year to bounce back with. Last year was kind of a survival year. This year will be a bounce back year and grab and attain and grab that, grasp that market share, right? Like have more impact on the market, have more relationships, have more marketing out there, more people know who you are and what you do, and bringing in more referral partners and referral sources and, prospecting and lead generation. So that's, what we're looking forward to this year. As far as the podcast goes, definitely looking forward to more episodes. Full, transparency. Do I want to do them every week? Yes. Is it possible? It's definitely possible, but I want to keep the quality up too. I want to have the things to talk about. If I'm going to have guests, which I am, again, all the guests I had last year, first of all, I want to appreciate them and thank them for jumping on. And I want to keep the quality of the guests high, and they will get, better and better as we grow. But I also want to keep the content valuable. We're not going to talk every week if there's nothing really going on or I don't feel motivated to share anything as far as value to you guys. So that's the plan. But it is going to be something that grows, and I'm looking to do a lot more of it this year and grow the production value and invest into it. So we'll see how that goes, but definitely looking forward to it. Looking forward to doing more business on the mortgage side, looking forward to doing more business on the Tia's housekeeping side with my wife's business. It's been doing well, and we went through some changes over the last couple months to make sure that business, which is super viable, is successful, and happy with the changes we've made and gaining more clients and relationships every day. So that's something I want to focus on as well. And then just adding to the content and the value that we're putting out there for you guys. So I think that's pretty much it for our recap. I want to keep these on the shorter end because I feel like it's just easier to digest. I see some of these podcasts that are like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours long, and I got to watch them over the course of a week. I don't want to do that to you guys. That's not how I consume content. I like to get to the point and give you guys the content and the value, and then we can wrap it up until next week. So we will get back to the guests and the interviews, and if you have anyone in mind, definitely reach out to me, or if you'd like to jump on, definitely reach out to me, and we could probably set something up. And then, let me know what you think about the new space. I mean, it's the same space that I'm shooting in. I'm just showing you a little bit more of my office and the room, just to give you guys a little bit more personality and, and how we're living in the environment we're in. So, again, super excited. Thank you again. I appreciate you. We're going to end as we always end. The goal in life is to be mortgage free. Control your emotions, have integrity. If you want to use my likeness, I need equity. And if you're really trying to win, you need to bet with me. In the words of our friend who doesn't know he's our friend yet, 2 Chainz, Mortgage Free with DJ Premier. So thank you. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any feedback, any points of value, and how we can help you grow. Till next week, talk soon. Take care.